Hello, everyone. I guess the mic works. So, LocalBitcoins is a Bitcoin trading platform which works a little differently from the centralized exchanges. We offer an escrow service in Bitcoins, and all of the company income is in Bitcoins. So that makes it somewhat interesting. Also, our business model scales pretty well. So it's global. So I'm here to tell about being the first Bitcoin companies is not that easy. You tend to make lots of mistakes, and also you will probably lose some money and so on. So I will go through all the mistakes we have done and all the different technical and business problems we have had, and how you can, if you plan to start your own cryptocurrency startup, you can avoid these mistakes. So first, as often finance startups like Bitcoin startups are really profitable, and especially like Bitcoin startup is a really common way to get rich, I would say, nowadays. So, but it's also a common way to get yourself in lots of trouble. Let's say we are probably like, I would guess we are like 6th to 10th biggest trading platform or exchange on globally. But still, like, it's quite small compared to the biggest centralized exchanges. But I'm quite happy to keep it small, at least right now, because it's always not good to be the biggest and baddest one. But yeah, let's when you think about it, it's quite understandable why people don't want to start Bitcoin businesses, even if it's quite profitable sometimes. Most importantly are probably technical problems, so that there's lots of new kind of technology you have to play with. It's been there only for like 4 years or something, and it's not very robust yet. There's lots of problems, and of course, if you are starting this kind of thing, you tend to be quite a risk taker. Usually, the people who know their stuff don't start these things, but the people who start these are the ones who don't realize what kind of risks are involved. Also, there are these legal problems. Cryptocurrencies are a new thing, so they don't have any laws or regulations. Only lately, some regulation talk has come to the governments and so on, but it's still so small thing that most of the politicians don't care or don't know that much. But still, you have to know how to avoid those things in the future. Actually, it's quite most of the time, like when people speak about regulation problems, it's not about government that much, but it's more about how to deal with banks. When you have a Bitcoin startup, most of the Bitcoin startups or the actual businesses the legal businesses are exchanges. So they need some kind of access to the traditional financial system, and it's really slow and difficult to get access to. In Finland, for example, it's quite difficult to even get a bank account to your business if you are starting a Bitcoin startup. So that kind of problems are really common, and it's not uncommon to have your bank accounts frozen or your transfers blocked if you are running a Bitcoin startup. I would say outside of Finland. Finland is quite a small country, and we have the banking infrastructure is here quite good, so that kind of problems are not that common, but I have heard of some. So, and of course, the fourth risk is that there are really lots of fraudsters. Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies attract lots of criminals, so So if you start doing some kind of business with cryptocurrencies, it's quite certain that you will get some kind of problems from those. So to be clear, I am speaking about the exchanges here. So if you raise something like 10,000 bitcoins for your new cryptocurrencies, that's a different story. You might get problems from some kind of financial authorities like SAC, or in Finland we call this finance authority, but I think they are not that interested yet. But it might be a reason. But with the exchanges, the problems are mostly banking related. And yeah, for us, it has been quite lucky because we don't have those problems because all of our income is in Bitcoin. So first I want to tell you a short story about Bitcoinica, which was a service in 2012. It was like exchange where you can actually have hedging. So you can loan money and gamble with that. You can gamble the Bitcoin exchange rate with lent money. But of course, that kind of service, that service was really, really popular because people like gambling or speculating with the Bitcoin value. But the story was quite short. So actually, the service was hacked 3 times, and lots of money was lost. And yeah. Also, the interesting thing is that the service was run by like a 15-year-old Chinese kid. But it was still trusted by, I guess, maybe at least hundreds of thousands of dollars. The thing is that other company tried to buy the service or bought the service, and all these hacks happened after the other company had bought this service. So it's very interesting. With Bitcoin, you never know actually what's behind those hacks. Like if they are really real hacks, or if there is like some kind of internal stuff going on. So if you have a couple of extra millions around and you plan to buy some Bitcoin stuff, but do your due diligence. Well, so, but actually the first hack is quite legit because it was a quite popular hosting service called Linode, and there was lots of Bitcoin services hosted on that hosting platform, and all of those got hacked, and all Bitcoins from those servers was stolen. And about the second and third were like really stupid, I think. Like you can avoid those with really basic security measures, like use strong password, use two-factor authentication. Don't publish your source code. Even if I'm an advocate of open source, but if you are running a business, it's better to have your source code closed. Well, that's just I think it's just a common sense, but yeah, it's like a kind of really obvious thing to me. But the thing that is quite common is that the hosting provider is somehow compromised. Like the hacker calls the hosting provider, please give me access to this service. And actually, at one point in our service, we had really lousy hosting provider from Switzerland. It looked very professional, but it was not. So they sent email to the customer support, and they include from my email. Like, of course, it's really easy to fake emails that way, but they included the CC, the hacker email. So the hacker knew something about the internal processes of the hosting provider, but they got VPN access to our service. But it's quite easy, even if that kind of access is given, it's quite easy to avoid it. Of course, you can run your own server, but still, like the hacker needs to restart the service. So if you encrypt everything, all data inside the server, when the server gets restarted, you have to like initiate the encrypted partitions. So that's quite easy way to deal with that kind of problem, even if a hacker gets or someone gets physical access to the server. Even in that case, it's quite safe. And also, the most critical daemons like Bitcoin daemon, you put on separate server, and you put some kind of SSH tunnel there, so that when the server gets restarted, all the tunnel goes away, and actually the hacker doesn't even know where the actual Bitcoin daemon is running. So it can run on separate hosting provider or so on some small computer in some corner or so. And I don't know how familiar are you? Yeah.
Just want to ask about the open source part you mentioned quickly. I totally understand the reasoning that it's good to keep open source.
Sorry, actually we need this microphone to.
Yeah, hi. I'd like to ask about the open source versus closed source you mentioned briefly. I totally understand the reasoning that it's good to have closed source. It prevents like the quick hacks that can be made to this exchange. But on the other hand, if you think on the contrary, like Bitcoin is an open source project, and that's been kind of the credible part of it. Anybody can make sure that there is no bugs and fix them. So wouldn't like in the long term it would bring more credibility if you would actually have like open source exchange, or in a way that even those exchanges could be confirmed that there is no bugs and stuff like that. Of course, it takes a lot of time and effort to do that, but what do you think? Just curious to hear your opinions.
Well, there's lots of work on these decentralized exchanges and so on, as in Ethereum and other projects, and those are usually open source. But the thing is that the problem with those is usually that they don't solve the problems on good enough level like now. So and most of our users, for example, the software, Bitcoin software, is too complicated for them. They don't understand what Bitcoin is. They just want to use it, and it has to be really easy for them. Like they are not really interested in running custom software and so on. So I believe in longer run. I also believe in this kind of open source decentralized server, but it's quite obvious that the market demand for Bitcoin, exchanging Bitcoin is happening right now. And if you want to be in that business, then you have to just hack around something quickly and get to the market. And in that case, if you are doing something quickly, you probably will always do mistakes. And it's just like a basic security measure to not like make it easier for the hackers.
Yeah, thanks.
So this is like I think like 99% of the exchanges or Bitcoin services implement this kind of security measure. So as the user needs to transfer money out or Bitcoins out from their service, there needs to be this kind of hot wallet which sends the money right away. But most of the funds, like usually in our service, usually 99% is stored in offline encrypted wallet, which is and those private keys never touch internet. So, and I also quite common way is to use bank safes actually. So banks offer this kind of well, it's quite funny because the idea of a Bitcoin is that you don't need to trust the bank, but actually bank safes are like probably the most practical and safe way to store something highly valuable, such as gold or Bitcoin private keys. So this kind of setup is quite common, or I think it's quite like industry standard now. So even if the hacker gets access to the hot wallet, only small amount of bitcoins is stolen. And in our case, it's usually less than 10% of the company assets that it's at one point in the hot wallet. So also there's a couple of others way to also try to make it more secure to host a Bitcoin service. Like this is something we have planned in our infrastructure. All the Bitcoin keys are actually on separate server, and they are not connected to the actual server at all, but the actual service at all. The actual service has only the public keys, and they are generated from deterministic public key. And then there is only this send-only separate wallet that is used for sending. And all the Bitcoin addresses in this send-only separate wallet are one-time use only. So in a case where the hacker gains access to the server, he doesn't get any of the private keys even in theory, but he only gets these send-only private keys, which are one-time use. So that makes it more secure. Also, the one problem this solves is that when you have lots of customers, your wallet that gets really lots of addresses, and sending bitcoins gets slower and slower. So when you have this send-only wallet, sending the bitcoins is quicker than using the Bitcoin D. Also, it makes scaling up the service easier, as you can, like when you have this read-only receiving addresses, you don't need to worry about having the private keys encrypted and everything. So you can just add lots of keys. Okay, so then I will go through other kind of historical example. This was quite popular service in 2012. It was like Bitcoin stock exchange where you could buy stocks and assets, or mostly Ponzi schemes with Bitcoins, and you could speculate with them, sell them, buy them. And if I remember right, in 2012 there was 2.6 million of money stored in this service, or assets in this service. And at that time that was quite a lot of money, because Bitcoin was still so small community. But yeah, so it closed in 2012, and there was concurrency errors on the code, so that, and they had lost something like 4,000. Some specific user had found this kind of concurrency error, and they had stolen or used the bug to steal something like 4,000 bitcoins. And also when I started LocalBitcoins, I also had this concurrency error once, and concurrency error, and I almost lost 400 bitcoins. Back then it was 4,000 euros, but it was since the service was just starting and it was unprofitable, it was quite huge loss. So that's like a really good lesson learned. They actually the user who got the extra 400 bitcoins actually returned the money back. So I was really lucky. But after that I really learned like how to take care of these concurrency errors. So actually it makes sense to make several safety measures, like use these kind of global logs, like in global memory, and use SQL contracts and everything. And also I have learned to be really careful, like always leave lots of data trace. Like when someone is sending bitcoins, it is stored in something like 3 tables. I don't know. It's just like I don't know if if it makes much sense, but it just makes myself much happier to know that the data is duplicated, so that I can always check if there is some kind of transaction somewhere. I can also always check that everything is all right from some other tables as well. Currently, for example, as people make transaction from our service or outside, it's first written to SQL table, and then a background task processes the transaction separately in a separate queue, so that only one transaction is processed at one time. But yeah, sometimes there still can be a problem, like malleability was transaction malleability. I actually didn't include it in the slides, but that caused a lot of problems to many Bitcoin services. But it was only, it didn't result to any money loss for us, or I don't know if it resulted to any money loss to anyone, but it was lots of hassle, like lots of work needed to be done to go through all the transactions that had problems with them and so on. But like MT Gox claimed that they had lost money because of that problem. I don't think it's really valid reason. So there are legal hassles. I think probably the most famous example is this BitInstant, which has some kind of, he was in jail for us, so he ran a really successful, this guy called Charlie Shrem ran a really successful Bitcoin exchanging service, and he had like helped some customer to to evade their like processes in a way, or something like that. So it was quite clear that he had broken the law. And then, well, he was in jail for a short time. I think now he's on some kind of probation. But of course, when this kind of legal thing is going on, it takes ages. I think currently he's free and he goes to seminars and everything, but I don't know what happens with that case. Then there was one Indian exchange, Bitcoin exchange, where they raided the servers and offices of the exchange. But actually, I don't know anything about Indian legal system. It might be it's just a random thing. And well, related to us, there was in United States, Florida, there was an undercover agent buying bitcoins from cash, with cash from some of our traders. Our platform was used as a contact way to do that. And actually the undercover agent had told to the trader that he's going to buy stolen credit cards with those bitcoins he's buying. And the guy still sold him bitcoin. So that was quite clear like illegal thing to do. So, but from our point, it didn't affect the cash trading to us. It's done outside of our site. So we are not that involved with that actually. 90% of our income comes from online trading. But like we are still the global service that everybody knows that it's the way to look up for the cash trader near you. So it's more like marketing for us. Yeah. So there is these banking problems, and I think at least usually all the problems why Bitcoin startups die it's like combination of all this. So there's lots of technical banking and so, but I think banking problems might be the most common problems. Like in 2012 there was this really popular Bitcoin exchange called Intersango, and they got all of their bank accounts frozen, if I understand properly, and also the founders' bank accounts were frozen. So, and in the UK, I think it's in Finland. If you need a bank account for yourself, the bank must provide you a bank account. But in UK and US, it doesn't work that way. So there's quite a big this kind of unbanked population which actually can't get bank account. And if you are now happily using your banking services, you probably don't want to get rid of them. So it's better to be careful. But yeah, of course, Bitcoin makes it easier to live without bank account. So I think those guys are quite okay. So also the banks are. There might be some reasons that the banks don't like Bitcoin or they fear them, but there's also lots of practical considerations like fraud, phishing, and this kind of transfer reversals. So when you as a bank have a Bitcoin exchange as a customer, there's shitloads of transactions, money coming in and out quite heavily. And lots of those transactions can be somewhat problematic. Like that's why banks don't want to provide bank accounts. I think that's quite clear reason. Anyway, for example, in Finland, I think if you mention the word Bitcoin and go to one of the biggest banks, you won't get bank account. And actually, we had bank account at Nordea, and they said that we don't want you as a customer. So we went to a smaller bank, but we don't exactly need a bank account that much anyway. So it was not that big issue for us, because our business doesn't depend on the bank account. Actually, we pretty much run the business on Bitcoin only nowadays. So then there is like a social engineering and fraudsters, which mostly target your user base. And we have found out that like if people have enabled some kind of two-factor authentication on their account, it removes at least 99% of the account hacks. And so if you start a Bitcoin service, it's recommended to implement some kind of two-factor authentication to the service right away, because it's quite obvious to all the scammers and fraudsters. And then we also lately implemented this kind of logging guards. If someone here uses Steam, you probably know it's like each time you use the service on a new computer, you need a verification code. So I think that might help as well. But there's really lots of small tricks that help with these problems. So anyway, I have mostly talked about the problems that result when you have the business successfully running. But of course, before that, the problem is getting the service out there and how to market it and so on. So my experience with this kind of web services, Bitcoin services, is that it's more related to the traditional how to run startup thing than specific to Bitcoin itself. So my favorite website related to startup knowledge is this Hacker News, news.icombinator.com, where I have learned my stuff. Like I read some book. I'm a fan of the lean startup movement, but I think these social media sites are the best way to grab cool new stuff and get ideas and so on. But yeah, and also if it's like a web service, you have to take care of search engine optimization and this kind of stuff. And well, Well, anyway, if you have ever tried to get some kind of website popular, it's kind of quite the same in Bitcoin, that the same stuff works there as well. But also I think the best place for Bitcoin news is this Bitcoin Reddit. I follow it every day. And of course, like with Bitcoin, it's new to everyone. It's also new to accounting companies, and so at first it was quite difficult to get an accountant who would like to do Bitcoin accounting, because it was so small thing, so it was not really lucrative business in the beginning. But once I started to get customers to the company, it was we found an accountant who was willing to deal with this pain in the ass, Bitcoin accounting. So, well, usually it's the accounting and taxation is quite simple. Like when you receive Bitcoins, you have the current euro value, and you calculate the taxes based on that. But in practice, it's usually because the software. There is not yet accounting software for Bitcoin or anything like that. You have to do it using some kind of Excel sheets and so on. And so in practice, it's often you have lots of pain to deal with it. So that's one problem. Also, the one problem is that of course, in theory, like the government could change some of the rules or assumptions you have made with the accounting and taxes. So it's kind of regulative risk. But yeah, well, I think it's still like the smallest risk you have to worry about. Yeah, so about the company story and how it grew. In 2012, it was still one-man process, just a simple listing, and there was no business model. I was spending my time and money on the site, but we didn't have business model. In 2013, I implemented this escrow business model, and the website actually started making money. And since then, it has grown pretty well. Anyway, volatility is the most cited concern in Bitcoin, and we have made this quite interesting decision to have all the Bitcoin assets of the company, or most of the assets of the company, in Bitcoin. And usually the first thing when I go to any tax consultancy or any kind of, first thing my accountant said to me is to liquidate those Bitcoins from the company. But I'm very glad that I didn't do that, because actually it has been quite good strategy to keep those Bitcoins. So usually like in our case, for example, you can see that our Bitcoin revenues went really up, but the euro, after that the Bitcoin value started to rise, and so we made quite lots of money just by holding the Bitcoins themselves. But okay, now like last half a year or so, it has been quite peaceful. So I think after that January, we have stayed about at the same levels of income. Currently, I think we need do something like 180K revenue a month. Yeah, I think like last month was 170K in euros, but it's around that. Also, one thing about Bitcoin, I think it's very US driving. So like the infrastructure in the United States is the highest level. Lots of big companies like Dell and New Edge and so on are taking Bitcoin in United States, and that's why like most of the customers are also there. Also, of course, there's lots of talk about China, but at least we don't have much users in China, so I guess it's quite difficult to a market to get in. But also I don't know if the Chinese people actually use Bitcoin much as to buy stuff and trade stuff, but or is it just a speculative vehicle there, or a way to get money out of the country. We also started this our own Bitcoin ATM project, which is like which has been quite pain in the ass. Doing hardware is much more difficult than doing software, so I don't really recommend that. And also, it's very competitive. There is something like 15 companies doing Bitcoin ATMs. But okay, yeah, you got to have hobbies. But I don't think our ATM project is not getting profitable anytime soon. So. But we have two around here in Helsinki, so they are all already running and operational. The ATMs themselves have paid them the production costs back for the operator, but you need to spend quite a lot of money in the research and development of these products if you want to have them working robustly and so on. Well, anyway, that was pretty much it. If you have any questions, now it's time to ask.
Yeah, thanks for a great presentation, first of all, and very interesting. I'd like to ask about the current state of Bitcoin around the world. You show the picture and the map. But what do you think, what country is the most sort of like Bitcoin friendly? And what is the state of Finland? Is actually Finland some of the driver to try this Bitcoin like ATMs and stuff like that? I saw there is some Bitcoin tour coming up. Just can you reflect a bit where we are as Finland, or is there some other progressive country here?
Currently Finland is a really good place to start a Bitcoin business because the financial authority and the central bank has stated that it's not like they don't want to regulate it. So you don't need licenses. In Germany, for example, you can't have Bitcoin ATM running. No one has the courage to run a Bitcoin ATM in Germany. My friend in Germany, they run a Bitcoin ATM like 2 months in a bar, and after that they got like shitloads of crap from the German Bundesbank, German central bank. So in Finland, I think they have attitude like more like they let the people to experiment with it. I guess at some point, I think every country will have more regulation with Bitcoin, but currently it looks quite good. So, well, so yeah, Bitcoin. It's good to have a Bitcoin startup in Finland currently, but otherwise, I think like if you go to countries like Singapore, Hong Kong, and which are quite liberal, even before Bitcoin, those are like very safe places to be, in a sense.
Thanks. Can you still elaborate a few words about a Bitcoin tour? What's that all about?
Okay, so it's like a, sorry, forgot about that. So it's like a Bitcoin tour inside Finland, where these Bittiroha guys go from place to place, like even small places in Finland, Mikkeli and Kuopio and so on, and they get, like spread the Bitcoin knowledge and Bitcoin love to everywhere in Finland. And also LocalBitcoins is also, we have one ATM there on the tour, and we are also involved with that. So, and there is a party, I think, next month, after like 3 weeks or so in Helsinki, in the end of the tour. So, welcome there. It's in some bar called Namu.
Thank you. You said that your business is running mainly on Bitcoins. So I was just wondering, like, do you reward your employees or shareholders with Bitcoins, or do you reward with cash, or is that a?
Quite common question is like how do we actually use the Bitcoin and how do we pay for those services? Actually, Bitcoin is quite liquid, so it's not that a big problem. Many of our employees take their salary as Bitcoins, but also we don't have any problems with paying in euros because we just exchange the Bitcoins to euros when we need it, but usually on the last minute, so we don't keep much euros around. And also there is lots of these Bitcoin bill payment services that you can pay your bills using Bitcoin and so on. Sometimes those are quite useful.
But it's pretty difficult to forecast your business if like the Bitcoin is so volatile.
Yeah, well, but it's startup business. Even if you are running any kind of startup business, you have kind of all the time you are wondering like if the company is going bankrupt or if I'm going to do million this year or 10 millions. And so, well, we have been cash flow positive from January 13 each month, and we make profit something like 50K a month. So I'm not really that worried. And also it's kind of, for me, it's kind of, I just want to experiment this thing. I want to have this risk. And I don't want to return to the traditional economy anymore. So it's more like, for me, it's not about the business anymore. It's more like I just want to, sometimes, let's say, troll the economy or something like that.
Thanks.
I've actually got two questions, and I hope you don't mind. But sort of like the first one is to continue on that previous subject. So when you were basically working with a very volatile currency, basically fluctuates pretty heavily compared to traditional currencies. So how do you, from an accounting perspective, I just previous semester I did a course in basic sort of like company accounting, and how do you deal with that from an accounting perspective? Do you have like a currency loss gain sort of account that you then sort of like at the end of every sort of like accounting period, then sort of like count that, okay, how much did we have, how much did we lose sort of like on just, or gain on just fluctuations on Bitcoin?
The truth is that we don't worry too much about that in practice, but the accounting wise, the accounting is done using this kind of last in, first out accounting method, so that when we get the Bitcoins, they stay at the books market at that price, but when we spend the Bitcoins, we spend always the newest Bitcoins first.
First in, first out. So you basically do it,
we do last in, first out accounting. Yeah, but to be honest, I just look how much we have cash. So and I plan the company on that basis, based on the cash flow, basically.
Okay, then the latter question, that's, you mentioned the concurrency problem, so like you discovered, was it that you hadn't thought of concurrency because, I've done basic course in SQL, and there sort of like the concurrency thing is taken up pretty early? Or was it that you just hadn't prepared, somebody had found like a way to cheat the system?
Well, I had thought about it, and I had tried to evade it, but I wasn't, I wasn't skilled enough. So there was still some kind of concurrency problems, even if I had tried to prepare for it. So.
Okay, thanks.
A question that's probably asked many times from you. What do you think about the altcoins, all the different other virtual currencies? And I think at least in Finland there's been some discussion about Monero coin and some Finnish dude investing in the team. What do you think about altcoins and Monero?
I think altcoins are good, and I think the idea of Bitcoin is to encourage this kind of free currency competition. But business-wise, I think we are not going to implement those very soon because as far as their relative market cap stays so low. So if you compare Bitcoin market cap to the altcoin market cap, it's quite low. And also, I'm quite in altcoins. I'm quite concerned about the fact that they used to do the crowdfunding rounds before they have any actual implementation. So, and it's quite common to collect quite lots of money. So myself, I don't personally, I will put that money in those rounds because I have seen quite many projects which have gotten quite a good funding, but in the end there was nothing practical. I think the reason is that once the developers get the money, they start smoking weed and drinking beer and instead of programming. So,
thanks.
One question left. Okay, I guess there is no more questions. Thank you for